All right, welcome for today's session. It's very nice to see all of you here. We're going to have a very exciting session today, a live webinar about the next wave of business automation, and more so about how the BPM can tie into the other technologies for business automation. Hopefully today we can shift your mindset a little bit in this discussion. My name is Karli Kalpala. I'm the head of business and services design at Digital Workforce. Digital Workforce is the leading intelligent automation pure play service company globally, highlighted among others by Forrester and Everest research agencies, and I'm responsible of the business intelligence and service strategy in Digital Workforce. My background is in engineering and automation consulting. Today I'm accompanied by Misha, senior long-term tech belt in the BPM case modeling kind of industry, and also known as the CTO of Global. And I will obviously, Misha, let you to introduce a little bit your background and also a little bit about Global to start with.
Sure. Thanks, Karli. Nice to be here and talking with you around those topics. I think they're super exciting. I've been actually working in this area for the past more than 20 years. I started with process and case management where there was no solution out there. So I started building my own, and here we are. Currently CTO of Global, responsible for the whole product innovation, product development, also helping out in customer projects, because I always want to know and to figure out what are the challenges out there. How can we better support people with Global's technology, currently relying around fully automating intelligent automation platform that we will see a bit later.
Thank you. Then also from the organizer side, there's Oona, who is going to monitor the technical setup as well as the questions coming in for the last part of the this webinar, which is the Q&A. Good. The key takeaways for today's session, there's 3 sections that we are going to discuss about. First, a little bit setting the scene, putting down some kind of a context into the discussion, and highlight that, especially through the kind of a change in the mindset of how automation is applied and how to move beyond this type of a tactical task automation. Then we are going to discuss about the enablers, the technologies a little bit, RPA, BPM in a process setup, in a kind of how they solve those business automation challenges. And then finally, we spend a little bit time about what is happening in the BPM kind of section. How does a modern tool look like? What is the benefits? Where has that industry led us during the past, as Misha mentioned, over 20 years of development, obviously. To set the scene, I would like to kind of spend a couple of minutes on shedding this picture from the RPA point of view. And this is mainly because from our background as a company, Digital Workforce, our inheritance, our DNA comes from the RPA task level automation. And I would call the last 5, 6, 7 years of this kind of RPA and hyperautomation era, the tactical task-focused automation era. And its main focus has been to trying to find and move tedious and mundane tasks from humans into some type of automated bots, agents, RPA, chatbot, whatever you have there. And this has been a tremendously successful journey for many organizations. It's really kind of the low-hanging fruits in 6 years ago when I started in the industry. It was not an anomaly to find 10 or even 30 FTE processes or tasks in this domain that could be automated in a matter of weeks. So there's a clear speed in development, and the kind of return on investments has been tremendously good, especially in the areas of EU and USA sanction screening, know your customer processes, purchase to pay in the financial accounting section, and so forth. And this it goes kind of without saying that the leading organizations, the RPA programs, they are measured in hundreds of FTEs as a benefit, cost saving benefits for the organizations. But in the same time, during the pandemic, during the past 2 years or so, RPA and this type of automation also proven itself as a contingency tool, an agile way to react to the changes in workloads, in what is your core processes actually, and that has helped out to kind of mitigate the impacts for many organizations. But at the same time, the RPA and hyperautomation, or the hyperautomation on top of RPA, or Gartner used to call it the connected RPA, the CORPA model. It's been adding AI capabilities to drive human-machine discussions, chatbots, structured documents, but all still focusing on the high volume task automation. And then obviously the question is that why don't we have end-to-end processes then? Why are we still in the kind of tactical task level automation? We talk about RPA, and mainly the reasons are that RPA as a context, it's in black box. It's lack of end-to-end transparency to the processes. So if you sequence many of these in a row, you lose control. It's also difficult to add complex logic, so case modeling, not straight through processing level processes with this paradigm. It's also, we've seen, at least in our customer base, that when your penetration levels of RPA gets high, you also increase partially the operational risk by having lots of alerts, emails coming back from the bots to the SMEs, to the business people, without any real transparency. Where is the problem? What is actually expected from me? How is my transaction process actually working? It's based on scheduling, batch run type of automations, and it doesn't really support long-running processes. At the same time, the mindset in the business decision, IT decision makers kind of minds are shifting. The Forrester reports, for example, that 76% of business decision leaders are in the process of totally reinvent or reimagining their end-to-end processes, or completely transform their end-to-end processes to support their digital business strategies better. And this is really kind of the left-hand side, the graph there shows, it's McKinsey research behind that, shows that typically in an organization, there's less than 10 processes that accumulate all the way up to 70% of the value that the organization kind of delivers the market. But still, our focus, now talking from the RPA point of view, has been to trying to find those tedious and mundane tasks, those high FTE tasks from the organization, and automate them without an actually view into how could we improve the end-to-end performance of the core processes. And at this point, I think I would invite Misha to have a reflection on this. I don't know how does it from your perspective. Now I'm talking from a kind of automation consulting point of view, mainly focusing coming from the RPA heritage. How is your view from this bottom-up kind of automation? Do you see this happening? What is your take on this at the moment on the market?
Sure. I mean, we see, or still see, but so that in the past, almost all over the place, right? People more from a tactical way, looking at tasks they could automate, just looking at single tasks, tedious tasks, stuff you have, entering data in a form to get out some result, and that could easily be automated by a bot, right? And the cool thing is you have quite a fast return on investment. Obviously, it's also easy to measure or to bring that up as a business case. But I always saw the lack of the end-to-end kind of view, right? I always saw like, hey, you're patching something here, you're patching something there, but you don't actually attack the true cause. And so we saw that quite often, right? People are also working with legacy systems, using bots to help automate their day-to-day tasks, but never look at it from an end-to-end point of view. And we probably will come to those problems a bit more, like what you lack in the whole overview of your organization, what's going on, data flows and stuff like that.
Exactly. How do you see at the moment, from your perspective, the leading organizations in your customer portfolio, for example? Where are they on this journey? Are they kind of decided to focus on the kind of strategic core processes, or is this a kind of ongoing debate what to do with your capabilities in general?
I would say that more and more those organizations have realized that at some point you will be hitting a wall if you're just focused on automate those single tasks. At some place you cannot go beyond that. You need something else in place. And what I gladly realized too is that people are more and more concerned around their user journeys, right? Especially the end customer user journeys. They talk more and more not around how can I get our overall FTEs down, how can we move quicker, but they care more and more about the user experience, the user journey. How does my customer feel if an onboarding takes ages, right? So we want to bring that time down. And so tackling it from a more end-to-end view from the user journey, which I believe is the right approach, right? To see how can we improve the user experience, how can we improve or cut time, end-to-end time of a client's onboarding, of how a claim is managed, or stuff like that.
Perfect. All right, hey, I will hand it over to you to walk us through the next couple of slides about walking us through this logic, how this all builds up, and what is the kind of journey that customers commonly take. So I will take the next slide, which is about the enablers, and let you to kind of walk us through on this section.
Cool. Yeah, what I would like to do in the next step is basically walk you from a typical journey that I just described of an organization. So here we first have kind of the old way of working. So there's a lot of manual work. You probably have that in throughout your organization still today. Excel, email, that's commonly used to collect data, to kind of build cases. So you build a list in your Excel, so you at least try to get a bit of overview. And here as an example, could be the extended due diligence process of a private bank onboarding a high wealth customer, could be somewhere in the place of an insurance company. So basically that generic use case applies to many domains. What I want to highlight is how you can, or how it was typically done in the past, step-by-step automation. So for instance, we have 3 manual tasks. You have to pull some data from legacy systems, enter some search criteria of, I don't know, the name of your client or number and whatever, take some data out, put it in an Excel sheet. The middle task is something more related. So you have to search the internet, research the internet around data, put it in the Excel sheet, and eventually put everything into yet another legacy system. So first step, organizations typically did was adding RPA into the scene. So those tedious tasks that could easily be automated by, taking some data, putting it into a mask, into search mask or form, pulling data out, and eventually get it to some other place. That was the easy bit of adding RPA to the scene. We still have a manual task, so we have to research the internet. That cannot easily be exchanged or done by a bot, so we keep that manual. Also collecting a collection of the data in let's say in an Excel sheet, whatever it is, and eventually we have yet another bot that puts that data into the core legacy system. So we see the process overall didn't change, still the same steps, but some of them have been automated through RPA. Of course, that could cut down time, that could cut down the work that had to be done by humans. So that was kind of the first step. And now let's see how we can further improve by adding BPM, business process management, to the scene as an addition, right? So we don't necessarily kick out RPA. We might still have that in place because some of our legacy systems might not offer good APIs, good ways of integration. So we might still want to have RPA in place. But as we see here, we basically exchange the middle thing by a process or case management tool that actually orchestrates when do we need to kick off a bot here, how to collect that data into central piece, and also even orchestrate or involve humans into the play. So the research tasks still have to be manual, so it cannot be automated. There's still intelligence needed, what we call typical caseworkers. But the case tool now truly orchestrates when those bots gets kicked off. They collect the result, and so we always know at the core, we always know how many cases are currently running, where are they, what's the status, how many humans we need to address, and eventually results still can flow through RPA into a legacy system. That's fine. We could also introduce system integrations using services like REST service invocation, whatever, to exchange bots as well there. But the true value here is you always have the end-to-end view. You know where your cases are. If something goes wrong, you have it at your fingertips. It's not lying somewhere around some data, some files on some servers, and you have to figure out what went wrong and how to correct it. So again, I guess this is by adding a BPM or case management tool on top of our RPA capabilities, it can really orchestrate people, bots, in a way that you always keep the overview. You always know where data or how data flows throughout your organization, and get the most out of that automation, I would say.
I think this is a very, very natural continuum in our customer base, coming from the RPA kind of, and we have seen in the industry in general that the benefits of RPA are in some sense maturing up. You have already picked those low-hanging fruits. And for example, a typical use case for us to go down these kind of ladders is that you start with the manual process, you automate those FTE heavy parts of the process with RPA. You gain some 10, 15, maybe 20% of efficiency gains in your process. But at the same time, when you have deployed, I don't know, 10, 15 bots in the same process along different tasks or in the same customer journey, for example, you start to kind of hit up a wall that you cannot increase the benefits by simply automating the stuff. On the one hand, the customers are having a problem that they lose the control, the transparency to the actual customer journey. I can walk you through an actual use case here on the next slide. But point being that kind of the loss of control, and at the same time, those RPA bots, they are actually setting out alerts, notifications, exceptions, business exceptions, completion kind of notifications, and they're relying on Excel's, SharePoints, and emails. And the situation is that once you penetrate or saturate the kind of the process with, or the end-to-end process with multiple bots, the manual employee or the human employees who are working on the manual processes, they start to get flooded in those alerts. We have one example where there's more than 300 alerts coming from the bots in the same process on a weekly basis. So most of the time of those kind of SMEs, in some sense, goes into solving what is going on in those automated tasks, instead of focusing and driving the cases through. And there's estimations that by simply adding the orchestration layer on top of those 15 to 20% of efficiency gains, there is an additional 10%, 15% to be gained, which accumulate all the way together. In this case, this specific customer case, up to 40% from the first step, the manual step, into the fully orchestrated step, into kind of efficiency gains, not to mention other gains like throughput times and so forth. And there's kind of examples from the market where the throughput times has been put down with 80% from the as-is stages and manual step and so forth. So really kind of from us, it seems to be a natural continuum to solve this type of bottom-up approach. Manual, then put the RPA in place, then RPA introduce another level of challenges, problems into operations, and then solving that by adding another capability to orchestrate and create those kind of seamless workflows between the bots and humans. And one example of this kind is a kind of routine screening of cancer medication. We call this the digital nurse concept that we have been working on with some of the healthcare industry. But this is the basic event here. What is going on is that you you have had a cancer, you are having medication, and then you need to go to blood test sampling for every 3 months or every 6 months to oversee what is the situation. And there is 7-8 steps in here that can be automated. Most of them are already automated by kind of an RPA or some similar kind of a technology. So there is those routine blood samples coming in, you analyze them, then this digital nurse, which is an fully automated solution. It's a kind of the concept of acting as a nurse in this end-to-end customer journey as with those automation capabilities. So there is a analysis of those results and a decision made that do we need to do, if certain thresholds are kind of passed, then there needs to be another set of laboratory tests, another set of tests to be done for the patient before this goes to a general practitioner, before this case goes to actually the patient goes to see a doctor. And our solution there kind of automates the results or gets the results from the result system, makes the decisions what tests needs to be done. Then adding the capabilities like global, it's easy to take the patient, the actual end customer of this process into the loop by offering them appointment kind of for retesting or new testing, what is the case requires. So we create the user interface, we can kind of send out an event, an email, a text message, whatever it is, and ask the patient to kind of, you need to take these tests, here are the available times that you could take, which one you prefer. And also at the same time, we poll this questionnaire, this patient with kind of other data that is needed in the process. What is your general condition? How do you feel about your kind of condition and so forth and so forth. Then the process goes, the patient goes to the laboratory, takes the test, whatever there is. They come back to the result system. And at this stage, the kind of automation collects, the case collects this the retesting or the new tests also from the system, and only then collects this case into one case and sends it out to the kind of general practitioner. And then we set up a kind of, or send out to the patient that here are the available times for the GP that you could take on and discuss with the kind of about the condition, what are the next steps. And obviously in the end, after this process has through, then updating all the records that are needed. Is it then to insurance companies? Is it then to the medical records? Whatever is needed in the kind of post process. So all of the steps, 7-8 steps here, has been first automated by RPA bots, by different bot level automations. But what the customer has been missing is a full end-to-end view to this journey. And there's actually, the benefits is obviously that we can automate a little bit or quite some much of the nurse's work in this process, but also there isn't any unnecessary kind of visits to the GP. We take care a priori of the face-to-face meeting with the general practitioner that everything has been taken and the results has been analyzed and the results are in a state that it can be actually understood. So there's nothing wrong with the kind of results, or they're not conclusive. So you know what is happening and only then set up the meeting. So you actually also increase the utilization levels of the general practitioners and so forth. There's multiple levels of adding value just on top of the automation by taking control of this process. And something that we hadn't been able to do with pure RPA is to actually take the patient into this loop, building the patient user interfaces, touch points into this process so that actually we take care of the patient journey here by automating the internal steps in the process. And this is very natural for us from our point of view, kind of coming from the bottom, automating bits and pieces, and then adding the BPM. What about you, Misha? In your kind of a context and history, do you see that this kind of bottom-up model solving the kind of problems that has been introduced by other automation, is that the way it still looks like to really happen? Or I think many times in your past 20 years, you have actually started to orchestrate the human work first, starting top down to work on the core processes, redefining the processes, and then moving to the automation. So what is a caricature type of a customer engagement that you have been involved earlier in your career when you consider from the kind of orchestration layer point of view?
I think you can also attach or attack problems from a more top-down approach, right? So what we've done in the past quite often was we called that start small and expand as you go. It was more like orchestrating people. Of course, that depends a bit on the use case. So if you're more around what we just saw in your example of different integration points, different tasks to be automated, then probably RPA, starting with RPA was the way to go. But there are also a lot of knowledge type of processes where it's all around the knowledge of caseworkers. They know how if they need an expertise here, if they need to involve somebody else here, and then we did more like a top-down approach by adding case management and orchestrated humans in the play. Hey, how can I best talk to my colleague to analyze with me the situation in this case, or adding some information from another source or whatever it is. And the central piece was kind of like the case floating throughout the organization. And then as a next step, you started integrating systems. So before, when it's a knowledge heavy process, you probably spend most of the time, I don't know, looking at data or looking at a situation, taking decisions, and eventually put some of that data into systems. But overall, that percentage of actually adding the data to a system was not that big. But still, you could then, as a next step, integrate and do that automatic. So you have to spend less and less time in putting the data into systems and just spend more work on the knowledge that cannot be just delegated to bots, for instance, right?
Definitely, and I think also the kind of at least when we're working with you now during the past year and a half or so, I see and kind of in some sense an bonus benefit that can be achieved by utilizing this type of centralized orchestration platform for all of those tasks and human steps in the process. It's on one hand, it's about the compliancy, audit trails, but also kind of you can recreate the cases, all the data, variables, audit trails is in one place. So post analysis of a process, for example, in the risk and compliance, let's take sanction screening. You can always recreate the case end to end, and you can answer the question why you have been granting a loan or I don't know, paying out a kind of invoice to someone who apparently seems to be on the sanctions list or something. So it's cutting down the time spent on recreating the cases and answering to those kind of post-audit questions. There's a tremendous kind of cut down in the time spent in there. And if you have some examples in practice, but I think that great bonus benefit that comes almost as an out-of-the-box feature from this way of approaching the business automation.
Yeah, absolutely glad you mentioned it, especially in highly regulated domains like banking, insurance, financials in general. You always have to have proof, right? If something goes wrong, if you need some due diligence afterwards, some screening, whatever it is, you need to find that data. What case management can bring to the picture here is kind of a natural collection of whatever happens in a particular case. It's all stored in that case. If you do it the proper way, you have everything recorded, who took a decision when, what was the data they were based on, those decisions were based on. That comes in natural. You don't have to do anything special to collect that data. Whereas if you just have like a couple of bots here and there, your data is still scattered, right? You still have to kind of manually put all that together or research if, for instance, you have to do e-discovery at some point. So I think that case management, process management can really add to that picture from a pure audit and replay point of view.
Definitely, and I think the same kind of insights then, when you accumulate that over all of your transaction, all of your instances, so not only going into the audit trail of this one peculiar a kind of a case, but actually when you sum everything over, it comes as another kind of out of the box feature to kind of understand the process kind of bottlenecks, the process improvement points, this type of heat maps that you can see on the screen, or they're building some kind of management dashboards that actually sheds you a light into the overall performance of the process. And that is quite neat in your, at least in your technology, that you can just simply easily attach to these type of informations as you go down this road. And I think the benefits there are very, very tangible. Do you have a word on that, or kind of example how that kind of adds into the picture?
I think that's exactly then even the next step of the journey, right? That once you have that data, once you have your case or process management solution in place, it's not only the audit trail that helps you in your day-to-day business, but it's also a way that you can do what we call process mining. You can go and analyze, how did I do in the past? Can I recognize some bottlenecks? Can I change the way people are interacting? Can I do stuff in parallel, which probably I didn't do before, to further optimize the throughput time, the end-to-end time, let's say, or to improve the overall user journey, the user experience. So you have all that data at hand, right? So you can go back and analyze your cases and see how you did in the past and what you can further improve.
Perfect. All right. That's the end of this section. Going now to kind of let you to more talk about the general capability of Flowable, how all of this that we have discussed, solving the orchestration problem, building those audit trails, having that process mining type of the process insight in place, all of that kind of plays and comes together from in your perspective on your kind of capability and the track record that you have been building these solutions, not only the solutions, but the tools and technologies for 20 plus years, as you mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah, so let me go a bit into details around Flowable Work, which is our main product at Flowable, a truly intelligent business automation platform. So I think what we've seen in the past, or in the past couple of slides, especially when we brought our PA into the picture, it was all around data at the end of the day, right? You have to get data here, collect data there, put it somewhere else. So data flows throughout your organization. That's a main thing that we automate in Flowable. So as we see that in the center here, we have data floating around, where we have our main capabilities, which is case management, process management. I could talk about that for ages, how they combine and so forth. We're not going into details here. That's probably up for a next webinar or something. And then we have decision models. We have rules that how this data is treated if you have to bring out a human into the play to enter data through a form, for instance, or even in Flowable, we can even really truly build end-to-end journeys by even integrating our end customers into the play by using intelligent forms, putting out on your portal or website, even by using what we call an omni-channel approach, by, for instance, using messaging systems nowadays, using WhatsApp, WeChat, Line, and whatnot, and building or combining that all in through a case. So we have different data sources we have to tap into by using system integrations, REST services as an instance, any kind of API, but also using messages or event systems nowadays. If you want to integrate or flow data through events, a bit more asynchronous, that also helps building up the system and integrating systems. So that's what we basically do at Flowable, using Flowable Work. We integrate data flows, we integrate through different channels, different systems, but always the case is the centerpiece that holds all that information together, orchestrates services, events, data, but also humans, or PA bots, for instance, as well, to put everything into place. And we do that with what we call a low-code approach. So in other words, it's very fast and easy to build up those end-to-end processes. You don't have to be a super geeky, techie guy or developer to actually be able to do that. and that's what we call low code. Some easy stuff can even be done without any code at all. That's what we call no code. So you just build your form, you define your, visually you define your process flows, your cases, your forms. There's no code involved. But you can also go fully what we call pro code. If you have a complex system integration, you might still need some coding. And we allow you to do that. So it's not a kind of closed system, whatever is there you can use. If you want to go beyond, it's the end of the road. It's not like that. So you can integrate, you can extend if needed. So that's what we call for no, low, or pro code. And the best part is it's open. So the core is open source. You can find it in flowable.org. You can find it on GitHub. That's fully Apache license, free to use, open source technology. So the core engines like process, case, rule engines, they are free open source. And of course, we built a full automation platform on top, which is commercial, because at the end of the day, we still need to make some money. But it's with the same architecture. It's a totally open architecture. The same mindset that went into the open source engines is available in Flowable Work, in the enterprise version as well. So it's fully open. You can extend it. You can integrate with, but you can still benefit from the openness of the whole system. Being open source at its core, we have a big community out there that can even help. Can help answering questions. So there's forums out there, everything you need in a nowadays open source or commercial open source system. And I guess the most important thing is we follow or we implement open standards. So for process management, the BPMN, business process management notation, is natively supported by Flowable. The same for the case management modeling and notation, CMMN. It's a bit younger than BPMN, not that well known, but from the same organization that created BPMN. So you can use both at the same time, and that's the true beauty of Flowable. You don't have to decide for either one of them. Use them the same time, the same end-to-end process. You can use both, or even the triple crown, as we call it, including DMN, decision management notation as well. So those three engines, core engines, they natively, seamlessly integrate in Flowable, so you can use all those standards at the same time to tackle your end-to-end business journey. And of course, those models, and we go beyond that. I think in the meantime, we have something around 22 different models that you can visually use without code to combine and to build and automate your end-to-end user journeys.
Very good. And as you mentioned, the kind of, I think the very interesting domain in especially what is available on your platform is allowing to go into that case modeling domain.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a little bit more abstract. We are planning together now with Misha to actually set up another webinar later this year, hopefully probably start of next year if we can make it during this year, where we actually dig in deeper into how to use, how does the tool look like, how these engines come to life through kind of demoing and modeling in, and you can also see how the low code, no code kind of aspects built into the domain. And I think that is probably the key change. Everyone probably knows that BPM as such has been on the market for ages, and probably the whole narrative that they had today, some of you might think that, yeah, I see what you're talking about. It makes a lot of sense, but surely it must be expensive. Surely it must be kind of only for those organizations who can afford to spend a lots of kind of money into scarce, very techy resources, pro code type of closed platforms and so forth. And I think that is really what has changed on the market.
Absolutely.
And can you shed a light a little bit on how this actually come into life in your use cases? And you talked about this, but just to kind of elaborate on this, I think it's super important to keep that topic up in while we go down the discussion.
Absolutely. We've seen that. We're still fighting that paradigm from the past, where, as you mentioned, people would still think like, oh, if I go into this kind of BPM-ish or case management topic, I have to spend tons of money and time to finally bring something live. But nowadays, it's not the case anymore. With our open source approach, light approach, you can start small and expand on the go. So you have a very good return on investment after a couple of weeks. Even we have customers actually have examples where a customer from the time when they got the license of Flowable, it took them 2 weeks to bring a fully end-to-end process live in production in their organization. And so you can start in 1-2 weeks, build something out, get it out, get the benefit of that, and then still start expanding it, start optimizing it, start adding more and more stuff to it. I think this kind of mindset, you don't have to first spend weeks and months in analyzing and then eventually bringing something live. Sometimes it's still done that way, unfortunately. But with technology like Flowable, you can truly start small and add capabilities, add integrations, add more stuff as you go and as you learn how to elaborate on your user journeys, on your end-to-end picture of your business processes. So nowadays, it's not a matter of spending millions and years on bringing something live. It's more like choosing a tool, buying into the and commit as a whole organization into that journey and start fleshing out those end-to-end user journeys and bring them live.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting indeed. And I think it's worth to mention here, obviously in the audience, there's people from multiple backgrounds, but something that we are super excited about, exactly this kind of, you can basically apply the same type of logic that you have used in the RPA programs, that you start small, you scale quickly, and you can kind of create these self-funding programs where you, each and every deployment, that is, the deployment cycle might be 2 months, 3 months on average, something like that. You can build a business case and a return on investment case for each and every of those. So you don't actually have to build a business case for a full-blown BPM rollout across the whole organization, try to add the millions together and see when is the payback. You can actually start automating, and you can do your digital nurse, you can do your, I don't know, even in a support processes like your travel reimbursement processes or something like that. Start with that, understand what is the business case there, implement it a couple of months, and then see what is next on your kind of roadmap. And that is kind of the capability, if we talk, the process, discover, design, and then define, deploy, and run, that you have built as a capability, as an operating model in those RPA programs. It's exactly the same logic that applies here. And the technologies, as we talk about, low code, no code, even pro code, but the pro code using those open standards, open source, open architecture, it's commonly available skills on the market. So you actually can transform your existing capabilities, people, resources, skills, and knowledge into taking this road as well. And I think the kind of that is the really game changer in the BPM industry, how I see it. And to summarize all of this, so we started by saying it's a change in the mindset. And I truly believe that is the first thing that needs to happen. So when we really kind of talk about what is the purpose of automation in this way of doing it, it's not anymore trying to put your radar on and find those FTE heavy, tedious, and mundane tasks. It's actually trying to understand there's less than 10 core processes, you have multiple technologies involved, there's humans in the loop. How can I improve business performance? How can I improve the customer journeys, end user journeys in these processes by taking this approach? Also, the potential that you can get out from the automations is increasing. Not always the kind of most FTE heavy tasks are the one that adds most value to the throughput times and so forth. So it gives you more kind of potential, and especially bringing the human in the loop, creating those seamless flows is a crucial thing into getting more value out, as we discussed. Only automating 10-15%, just adding the orchestration between humans, robots, getting rid of the Excels and SharePoints, another 15%. on top of into the efficiency gains, throughput times, and so forth. Opportunity discovery also changes, as mentioned a little bit. It's not anymore finding those tedious, mundane tasks. It's really understanding what is important for the business. And I think that is quite a challenge. This type of a fusion teams that Gartner and guys talk about, where you need to work together with the business and IT, or the Center of Excellence for Business Automation, together to understand how do I define and design the end-to-end process. But there, those low-code, no-code capabilities, model-driven approaches are very handy, because it's a language that the business people can understand when you define what is going on in the process. Business case obviously discussed about that, and yes, there's a new set of tools involved. And I put this as last in this summer slide because the tools are available. They are hardened, they are tested, they are really there on the market. There's lots of implementations live and kicking on the market. But it starts from the mindset. It starts from understanding what I'm trying to achieve with my automation program. And yes, the tools will be there. There's different tools, humans, there's AI, there's RPA, there's APIs. And then most likely you need this kind of sophisticated workflow engine, a BPM capability to tie that all together, create those cases, workflows, audit trails, transparencies, process minings into the insights. All of that is tied together with the BPM. And that's really the true role, in my opinion, of BPM in the business automation paradigm, being the orchestration and glue between the different assets that run your processes. I think we are in a state of entering the end of the kind of prepared time. There is kind of Q&A available. Now I see there's at least one question. I think this is for Misha, pretty much about the kind of quite technical, the location in GitHub. I think we can send that out, come back to you, Aya, later on after the meeting. But I think if you can shed light the kind of to the last topic that we discussed, the kind of role change in mindset. Is there any closing words from your side, Misha, that you would like to put down on the plate at this stage while we are waiting for our questions?
I'm excited that we're going down this road, because it has been a true heart for me from 20 years ago, as I said. And now we see that people are actually seeing and moving into this area. And I'm already looking forward to the next step in webinar with you, Carly, where we dig deep a bit more into how exactly can we approach those kinds of problems using case and process management? What are the modeling standards? How they fit together? Going for more hands-on mode. Probably also see a couple of demos and stuff like that, so you can really shed some light on how that could look like on a day-to-day basis if you want to go down that road. So glad to be part of that journey.
Yeah, I'm also very glad to have you part of the journey. It's a tremendous kind of insights that you can bring in the discussions. That's very, very valuable. I think we're running out of time. There is, at least I can see no more questions. Probably a question to Oona if you can see more than that one questions in the system.
I think people can also send questions afterwards, and we can collect them and answer them afterwards.
Exactly.
Definitely. So yeah, to sum up today's discussion, probably an introduction to the topic. Change in the mindset was one of the key kind of takeaways that we would like to introduce in this discussion. And as mentioned, we're planning on a more of a demo type of session together as a continuum to this, together with Misha, to show really how this all comes together from the systems, from the tools, how the modeling look like, so forth. And then we're also preparing an Ask Me Anything type of a session where it's then your agenda. The ones who come down to the webinar can post questions a priori to us, and then we spend the whole webinar on discussing on those topics, answering those questions, kind of trying to have the floor for your questions in that session. Thank you very much for everyone joining. Thank you, Misha, for kind of walking us through your insights. And I wish you a pleasant day, everyone, and hopefully this sparked some new ideas and some discussions internally. And once you feel that the discussion should be elaborated further, please contact either one of us, and we will surely help you to kind of dig a little bit deeper into the topics.
Cool. Thank you as well. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.